At 800 local time, the gray sky over Greenland's frozen waters shook with the thunder of jet engines as the U.S. Navy's Second Fleet moved to its highest level of combat readiness. An extraordinary and completely unexpected situation was unfolding, catching global intelligence off guard. French President Emmanuel Macron, in a surge of anger, ordered France's most powerful naval asset, the aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle, to lead a heavily armed carrier strike group directly toward the U.S. military exclusion zone. The objective was clear: use military pressure to send Washington a firm warning that its growing ambition to dominate this strategic island alone had gone too far. But the United States, under President Trump's hardline second term, was never likely to watch this happen without responding. The moment NORAD's early warning systems picked up signals from the approaching French fleet, the U.S. Navy's Second Fleet, led by the supercarrier USS Gerald R. Ford, was placed on full alert and moved quickly to meet the French force with a powerful show of strength. The tension rose to a stunning level, just when it seemed the world might be on the edge of a direct military confrontation between two of the West's oldest allies. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stepped before the cameras and delivered a sharp, icy response. She said she did not believe European troops could influence the U.S. president's decisions or affect his determination to secure control over Greenland. Yet right after that confident statement, something happened that even the boldest minds in the Kremlin could hardly have predicted. Instead of welcoming signs of division inside NATO, the Russian General Staff reportedly placed the entire Northern Fleet on high alert. That raises a troubling question. Why would a standoff between the United States and France push Russia into such a state of alarm that its nuclear submarines were ordered into an emergency pullback? Did Russian radar detect something even more dangerous than an approaching carrier group? Or is the world watching one of the most elaborate military deceptions of the modern era? The reality behind this fleet movement is far stranger and more complex than it first appears, and it all begins with a dangerous sense of overconfidence. As Arctic waters churned beneath a dark sky, France's Charles de Gaulle carrier strike group pushed openly into the Davis Strait with a level of aggression rarely seen before. U.S. electronic surveillance reportedly observed that the French fleet made no effort to hide its formation. Its PAMS fire control radar was operating at full strength, while its sensors appeared to scan U.S. defensive positions across Greenland without pause. Above the fleet, Rafale M fighter jets thundered through the sky, making aggressive passes near American early warning radar sites. It was a top-level display of strength, a calculated gamble by Macron aimed at pressuring Washington into backing down. France wanted to make one point unmistakably clear. Without Europe's agreement, the United States would never enjoy stability in the Arctic. But even more unsettling than the fleet's aggressive posture was the strange amount of noise it was generating. Instead of moving under strict emissions control to reduce detection risks, French warships were constantly broadcasting wideband radio signals and running active sonar at full intensity, sending powerful acoustic pulses deep into the seabed. To outside military observers, it looked almost reckless, like someone shouting in the middle of a firefight. But to anything concealed beneath the ocean, that chaos could serve as the perfect cover. And that is where the situation becomes even more dangerous. Russia, watching from the outer edge of the confrontation, could see this confusion as a rare opening, the kind of opportunity that appears perhaps once in a generation to attempt an operation of historic scale. Before we go further, here is the question everyone is asking. In a showdown like this, under brutal Arctic conditions, who comes out on top? France or the United States? Share your view in the comments. Washington's response to France was cold, precise, and uncompromising. Caroline Leavitt's statement that European forces could not influence the president was more than a diplomatic jab. It sounded like a signal that U.S. Northern Command had already received its direction. Almost immediately, the U.S. Navy's Second Fleet formed a tightening perimeter around the supercarrier USS Gerald R. Ford, a $13 billion giant equipped with the world's most advanced electromagnetic launch technology. From the deck of the Gerald R. Ford, EA-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft launched in quick succession, carrying advanced jamming systems designed to overwhelm the battlespace. Within moments, the electromagnetic environment over southern Greenland seemed to collapse into confusion. The United States appeared to switch into a full-spectrum electronic disruption mode, flooding communications and radar channels with interference. Surveillance systems operated by Russia and other outside observers were effectively blinded, while satellite links across the region were severely disrupted. The area was being transformed into an information blackout zone, a place where no one could reliably track events without access to Pentagon-controlled channels. And the pressure kept building. U.S. Arleigh Burke-class destroyers pushed directly toward the French formation, executing high-risk closing maneuvers at 30 knots. Waves exploded around the hulls, while 5-inch naval guns tracked across the horizon, each side watching the other with unblinking precision. A crushing sense of tension spread across every sailor on deck. Beneath the surface, the situation was even more chaotic. Both the United States and France activated active sonar systems at the same time, turning the ocean into a storm of sound. Waves of acoustic energy slammed into underwater cliffs and drifting ice, producing countless false echoes across the seabed. What looked like confusion to everyone else was exactly the environment Russia's northern fleet had waited years to exploit. As NATO forces stirred the entire region into disorder, Russian commanders reportedly gave the order to move their hidden assets. 2 Yasenem-class nuclear attack submarines, Kazan and Novosibirsk, slipped from their concealed positions and entered the turbulent zone. These submarines are considered among the quietest ever built, often described as shadows beneath the sea. Armed with Zircon hypersonic missiles, they represented one of Moscow's most serious strategic threats. Russia's plan was highly calculated. By using the noise created by the US-French standoff as acoustic cover, the submarines aimed to pass through the GIUK gap undetected and move deep into the Atlantic. From there, they could potentially bring their long-range weapons closer to the US East Coast. At 1200 hours on January 18th, reconnaissance data reportedly indicated the submarine group was advancing smoothly. The surrounding chaos from surface fleets and aircraft carriers was masking the sound of their propulsion systems. Confident the operation was succeeding, the captain of Kazan ordered an increase to 20 knots, a risky speed underwater, but one that could shorten exposure time and push them through faster. He likely believed Russia was outmaneuvering NATO in its own waters. But a critical mistake had already been made. The noise they trusted as protection may have been designed to trap them. At exactly 15:30 hours, the situation changed so fast that Russian electronic warfare teams had little time to respond. On the Link 16 tactical network, signals connected to the French fleet reportedly synchronized with the US Navy's Naval Integrated Fire Control System. In that moment, the truth became impossible to ignore. There was no real split, no genuine confrontation, and no approaching conflict between allies. The dramatic deployment, the public tension, the aggressive maneuvers, all of it may have been part of a carefully staged operation with one objective: force Russia's submarine fleet out of hiding. The United States and France understood that Russia's Yasenem-class submarines were so advanced that traditional passive anti-submarine tactics offered little chance of finding them. If they were going to be detected, they first had to be pushed into motion and guided toward a predictable route. That is where the French fleet's loud maneuvers and relentless active sonar activity took on a completely different meaning. What looked like disorder was likely part of a carefully designed trap. The intense noise above forced the Russian submarines to dive deeper and search for the few remaining quiet corridors where they believed they could pass unseen. What they did not realize was that those silent paths may have already been prepared for them. And this is where the mystery of the so-called small force was revealed. Reports claimed France had sent only 15 combat specialists, but those 15 personnel were allegedly among the most valuable assets of the entire operation. They were not standard infantry, but specialists trained in underwater acoustic warfare. Secretly inserted by American helicopters onto drifting Arctic ice along the expected Russian route, they carried equipment built for one purpose: listening beneath the sea. Working in brutal conditions, the team drilled through thick ice and lowered highly sensitive passive hydrophones into the water below. When the Russian submarines increased speed to rush through the GIUK gap, the faint signature of their pump jet propulsion systems became far easier to isolate. What sounded nearly silent in open ocean conditions could now be traced with surprising clarity by experts who knew exactly what to hear. The coordinates of the 2 Yasen-M submarines were reportedly transmitted immediately to the U.S. Second Fleet Operations Center. The hidden hunters had become the hunted. At 1600 hours, the coalition appeared ready to end the operation without launching a single live weapon. 3 U.S. Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and a French Horizon-class frigate reportedly shifted position at once, bringing their sonar systems to bear at close range against the Russian submarines. What followed was not an explosion, but a demonstration of overwhelming control. Powerful active sonar pulses were projected through the water toward the submarine hulls. In the dense acoustic environment of the ocean, the effect would have been intense: violent pressure waves, heavy vibration, and a disorienting shock throughout the vessels. For the crews inside, it could feel like being trapped inside a machine under constant impact. Reports suggest onboard sensors and electronic systems may have been overwhelmed by the sudden signal intensity. Then the pressure increased again. USP-8. A Poseidon anti-submarine aircraft raced low over the waves and dropped multiple exercise torpedoes around the area, surrounding the submarines with unmistakable warning signals. The spinning propellers in the water sent a clear message to every sailor below. Your position is known, and escape routes are closing fast. Target locked. Russia had been pushed into a corner. If the submarine stayed submerged, continued acoustic pressure could disable their sensors and compromise control systems. If they attempted to launch weapons, they risked immediate destruction. Under crushing physical strain and intense psychological pressure, the two Russian undersea giants were reportedly left with only one option: an emergency surface maneuver. They broke through the water and appeared in full view of Western reconnaissance aircraft, a moment that signaled the mission had failed completely. But the real cost to Moscow may have gone far beyond embarrassment. During the operation, valuable acoustic data linked to the Yasen M-class submarines was allegedly captured by the sensor network operated by the 15 French specialists. If true, one of Russia's most guarded naval advantages had been exposed. From that point forward, submarines once considered nearly impossible to track would no longer carry the same aura of invisibility. Instead of unseen predators beneath the sea, they could become far easier to monitor in future encounters. Then came the final twist, one that reportedly stunned observers. After the mission ended, satellite analysis suggested that the French aircraft carrier, Charles de Gaulle, had never been present at all. The large fleet signature Russia believed it was tracking may have been an elaborate electronic deception created through decoys placed on Danish support vessels and coordinated cyber warfare measures. If accurate, France's only genuine combat presence in the decisive phase of the operation was the 15-man team positioned on the ice. Russia had deployed some of its most valuable strategic assets against what turned out to be a phantom force, only to be outmaneuvered by a handful of specialists. The United States emerged with a major strategic advantage, reinforcing Greenland as a hardened defensive stronghold, while weakening Russian leverage without firing a live round. Even Caroline Leavitt's earlier statement took on a different meaning afterward. It was true that 15 soldiers could never challenge the United States conventionally, yet those same 15 specialists may have been the key to sealing control of the Arctic Gateway. The campaign ended with Russian submarines slipping back toward the horizon, carrying the weight of failure and the fear of an opponent they could not clearly see. The Arctic, once viewed as contested ground, now appeared to be shifting into a zone dominated by American power and the strategic coordination of Western allies. But the bigger question begins now. Will Russia absorb the setback and remain quiet for the moment, or is it already preparing a more serious response aimed at US satellite systems and critical networks? And will the US-France partnership remain solid, or was this only a temporary alignment built on shared interests? Share your analysis in the comments. Your perspective could be the next one featured in our discussion. If you enjoyed this breakdown, support the channel with a like, subscribe, and enable notifications so you do not miss the next major report. Thank you for watching.